Are we rolling?
Yeah, we're rolling.
Let's jump into it then.
Hi, my name is Matt.
Okay, Matt, thanks for coming on the show. So you have a story about phantom smells. Can you start at the beginning and kind of tell us a little background, where it happened, what it was, and then the history of, I understand you have a little bit of a background information as to the origin of this smell potentially.
Okay, I'd be happy to. In the summer of 1993, I started working at a small Catholic school in northern New Jersey. And the school had been built about 30 years earlier by the pastor at the church, who had been there from 1939 to 1965. And families, the old families in the town who knew the priest, remembered the priest, and remembered the whole history of the parish and the school, used to come in and say, "Oh yeah, we still hear about Father Charlie. Father Charlie had been the pastor. He's the one who built it." And he seemed to have this incredible legacy. He had been born in Chicago in 1893 and joined the Carmelites when he was about 20 years old. He was a Carmelite priest. And he worked at a school in Chicago. I think it was called St. Cyril's. And then he went to Buffalo and Niagara Falls. And in each of those places, he built, sort of as a legacy and a testimony to Catholic education, these giant Catholic high schools. The buildings are still there, but some of them have closed or been repurposed. But when Father Charlie got to Norwood, it was just a mission. It was a little white church that had been a social club and was converted into a church. And he started to buy property. And the key to the story is that he would walk around the neighborhood in the evening or very early in the morning smoking a cigar. Always smoked cigars. And he would spot pieces of property and sort of envision this concept of what could be a future school. So he slowly bought up lots from a couple of people on one side of the street, the same side as the church. Then he bought a farmhouse and a garage and two other lots that adjoined the church. And across the street, he started to buy what had been a farm. He bought farm property and an old house, and they all became the property of the church. And what he was sort of known for was that he built schools, he built high schools, and was not big on the parish itself, didn't care what the church was like. He felt that the future was educating young men to be good Catholic gentlemen. And one of the things he really, he stressed mathematics, trigonometry, science, but he also stressed athletics. He was the athletic manager. But they said he was just obsessed with details. Each of these places, he walked around constantly with a notebook and took notes on everything, every little thing that happened. If somebody was being punished or somebody was being rewarded, somebody exceeded, or if you had a good practice or you did a good test, and all the while leaving this faint aroma of cigar smoke throughout the building. So he eventually comes to Norwood. He starts buying up this property with this vision of building this large Catholic high school facility in northern New Jersey. So he moves into the rectory. Now, he's been there since 1939, and they were renting small houses and apartments for him. It wasn't until the early 1950s that he actually moved into this farmhouse and converted it into the parish house, the rectory, and paved the lots next door, made a parking lot for the church. By the 50s, people were no longer just walking to church, they were driving, and he sort of saw that vision and started to work with architects on building a school. So his idea was they would start with an elementary school, and he built the elementary school. And behind it, there were big fields. He thought he would build the greatest Catholic high school in New Jersey and have athletic fields and have it all sort of co-joined. He built, in the school was a cafeteria and a small gymnasium, and he thought eventually he'd build a bigger gymnasium and then showers and locker rooms all attaching to this big high school. Well, by the 1960s, the school was finished. It was started in 61, and I believe it was finished by about 65. And in 1965, Father Charlie left the parish. He retired. And he left them all the plans. He thought this would be his greatest personal legacy, building this school. And he retired, and within a few years, at that point, I guess he was in his 70s, and by 5 years later, he had passed away up in Buffalo, New York. And the pastors that succeeded him, there were financial difficulties. The church was beginning to change after Vatican II, and Catholic education they lost interest. And the Archdiocese had stepped in and did something without consulting Father Charlie, not that they had to. They built a large Catholic high school. There was one in Englewood, New Jersey, known as St. Cecilia's. They built a large high school in Paramus, New Jersey, which is sort of the middle of the county, thinking that would be the focus of Catholic education for the county, for Bergen County, New Jersey. And that was the end of Father Charlie's dream. There was no further construction on that site, but there was a feeling that he never left the building, that he was always there. And after I started working there, if you were walking in the halls at night, sometimes you would just get this aroma of smoke, as if there was somebody walking through the building with a cigar. Several times I asked the principal, had somebody come in, or maybe somebody was in the kitchen downstairs. You turn on lights, or I'd take the flashlight, or I'd go down the stairs and you call for people. Never heard anybody, but the smell would be stronger or weaker. And another place where the smell of old cigar smoke would be was when you came in the front doors. Right across from the front doors was sort of a mosaic of the Blessed Mother, and the name of the parish and the school was Immaculate Conception. And this was there. It was donated by one of those old families, and it was as if somebody stood there in front of it at night smoking a cigar. The curtain that was in front of it would sort of have a cigar smell to it. And as I asked these families, I said, it's funny, every once in a while I smell a cigar. They said, that's Father Charlie Scharf. He never left the building. He died when that dream died, and it just broke his heart, and he always comes back. So, it's one of those things. And as you read his biography, you saw this intense dedication he had to building these Catholic high schools. And it worked out in Chicago and up in upstate New York and Buffalo, but the one here in New Jersey just never came to fruition. So it was sort of a sad ending for him. And as if he still walks the halls saying, like, what did they do to my dream, or when are they going to finish this? But
crazy. Well, it sounds like a very interesting and accomplished guy. And now I just have a few follow-up questions.
Sure.
So the first one is, as you kind of stated, this was not like a one-time occurrence where you're like, I think I smell a cigar. It was pretty frequent, right?
Yes. And what would happen even sometimes, the school facility was used for a lot of community events. And like the women's club would come in to do a soup supper. And they would say, was somebody smoking in the kitchen? We smell cigar smoke. And sometimes other groups would come in for basketball. There might be a basketball dinner, or there was times when basketball would sort of have a concession stand and be preparing things in the kitchen and say, who is it who walks around here smoking a cigar? And now I had learned from the families that were in town, the old families, where you just said, it must be Father Charlie.
Right. So that actually answered two of my other questions. One was, have other people smelt it, which obviously they have, because they would come to you. And my biggest question I had while you were telling us the story was, what came first? Did people tell you the history of the building, and then you smelled cigars, or did you get a weird smell first and then learn of it? So it sounds like before you even knew about the history of Father Charlie roaming the halls smoking, you smelled cigar smoke first, correct?
Yes. I had smelled it a couple of times. I would sort of search for it, like I said, but never really mentioned it to anybody aside from maybe the principal, just saying, like, do you notice this? And it sort of came together at a point when I did some inquiries. The parish was celebrating its 90th anniversary while I was there, and we were putting together parish history. And when I asked about some of these priests, some little references, people would say, well, yeah, there was Father Charlie was here for so many years. I remember him. My parents told me he baptized me, and then he first communion, and then confirmation or whatever. And everybody remembers him, smoking cigars and walking around, never in church, but always, over at the school property. And I don't know whether he smoked in the rectory. Nobody said that. But at those times, rectories were very private places. People didn't go into the rectory to visit as much as they do now, like where the parish office is. But yeah, it sort of happened that I knew it, and it rang a bell. It registered immediately when people started talking about him.
And would it only happen, you had said he'd walk around at night or in the morning smoking cigars. Was the smell only at night? It was never like in the middle of a school day, suddenly you'd smell a cigar?
No. Sometimes I would come in early in the morning, to check on the boiler or something, make sure everything was running okay, ready for the kids. And you would get this whiff. And late at night, if you're in the office, and I'd be working on something, and you'd step out into the hall, that's that area in front of that mosaic, and you would just get this like faint whiff of cigar smoke. And you go searching for it, and then you come back and you wouldn't smell it again. You'd say, this is just interesting,
Did it seem like the scent was moving almost, like as if he was actually walking the halls?
Yes.
Wow.
And I don't recall anybody saying they saw him. It was like this was just part of his aura. That and people, I guess when these older people were much younger, they knew that while he'd been here because they always would smell his cigar. So it was sort of like an everlasting remembrance of him.
Right. And it was never accompanied with like footsteps or anything, or it was always just sort of a smell by itself.
No, I would say, no, not that you'd hear anything and you wouldn't see anything visual, but you would just get this aroma.
And did you ever have a feeling of like, were you ever scared if you're alone at night and you smell it? Did you feel like you were being watched by someone, or is it more just sort of like a, non-threatening, just like, oh, there's Father Charlie, I guess?
No, I was. There were times in the morning I never felt that. Even coming in and smelling it, I guess it was just a different time of day, but I remember sometimes being there very late at night. There may have been a parent meeting or something going on. It was back to school night, and it's now 11:30, 12 o'clock, and you're closing up, and I'm shutting down the computers and things, and you would just get this sense as if like somebody was watching you, and that it's interesting because at one point somebody told me what the different rooms used to be, and I don't remember right now, but say I was in the computer lab. Well, obviously that wasn't the computer lab in the 1960s. It may have been something else, but it may have been like a science and math. And here, this was something that fascinated Father Charlie, and he actually taught it. And I believe, I say Father Charlie, but I think everybody always referred to him as Father Charles.
Oh, okay.
It was Father Charles Schaff, and people would say Father Charles.
And then do you have any type of explanation as to what this could be, if not a paranormal smell lingering from him? Do you have any possible explanations of, a clogged vent or something, or any type of way to kind of explain this away, quote unquote, logically?
I never did. I had theories, and I thought, maybe there is something in the filters here. Maybe something's just... It's a smell that I'm thinking is cigar smoke, but it's not. But the two things were that I never was able to track it down to a single location, and it wasn't consistent. It wasn't like it only happened in the winter when the heat was on. And the other thing is that building. There was a man named Mr. Brown who was one of the great cleaning and maintenance guys of all time, and they really would scrub that building from floor to ceiling. And for example, during the summer, they would come in, they'd strip all the floors and wax them and polish them, mop down all the walls. Everything got cleaned. And then you'd come back to school in September, and within a couple of days you maybe would smell it again.
Right.
And you just knew that like somehow it had come back. And I just can't believe that an odor would have gotten that embedded in the building that it was still there.
'Cause you're talking like 50 years now.
Yeah.
Like had gone by since he had died almost, right?
Yeah, now from 1965, now it is. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean, I've been out of there 10 years, so it was 40 years,
Right,
but still,
right.
that's a long time.
Yeah.
And especially for such a distinct smell, like a cigar has a very potent, it's a cigar when you smell it, it's not just like a weird odor. So if
Right.
you're smelling a cigar, it's a cigar, so it's hard to explain that as being anything else.
Yes, yeah. And just the people who knew Father Charles when he was there, there's a concrete slab in front of the church, just a square rectangle, where there used to be a payphone. He didn't want to pay for a phone in the rectory of the church, so that was the church phone for many years, like in the 1940s and 50s. And they said at night, like he would sometimes be out there smoking a cigar by the payphone, looking across the street at the school, waiting for a call.
Very interesting. And then before this happened, I suppose, did you believe in ghosts or spirits or anything? And after, had it kind of changed your mind at all, or was it in line with what you had already sort of believed?
In some ways it makes me believe, and I didn't really believe in them. I can't say I had ever really experienced anything before where I would say, there's an actual physical sort of presence. I mean, I think a lot about people, but never really sensed it in that strong a way.
Well, thank you for coming on, sharing your story. It was awesome.
No, it was great to be here. It's a one-of-a-kind experience, and this is the first time I've really talked publicly about it.
It's cool. And I will say one thing we always sort of appreciate is a story where more than one person experienced it.
Yes.
So it's cool that you have this story of this strange smell, the history of it, and other people, random people come to the building, have smelt it as well and commented on it. So it's a mystery that will continue to linger, much like the scent of old cigars.